everyone. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of Meet Me for Coffee. We are recording here at Manifest, the Future of Supply Chain in Las Vegas. I'm joined by Brian today. Brian, how are you doing?
Really good. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Brian, this is our first time meeting. I was shocked because I feel like I know so many people at DAT, but this is a new introduction for me, so excited to hear more about what you do. Would you also mind just kind of setting the stage here and giving us a little context as to our conversation? Let us know who you are, what you do at DAT. Totally. We'll get started.
Yeah, so I'm the CTO. I'm also the Chief Product Officer for DAT. I've been with the company for just about a year and a half, so I'm still relatively new. Freight industry is new for me as well in the last year and a half. I came to DAT from Nordstrom. I was the Chief Product Officer there. Prior to that, I worked for Expedia. I was a Chief Technology Officer, Chief Scientist for Hotwire. So travel, retail, startup background if you go far enough back to like Web 1.0 period. But it's been a really exciting plunge into freight. I certainly got a taste of it. Nordstrom's a major shipper, so it does a lot in the industry. But it's been really fun to get in my hands dirty with DAT.
I'd just have to ask, out of curiosity, what's something that you just have loved so far about logistics and freight that's been different than previous experiences?
Honestly, it's a super easy answer. So in some of my previous jobs, like a lot of times with technology, when you build stuff, you're making it more efficient. But in making it more efficient, you're not necessarily doing a good thing in the larger context. Like an example might be fast fashion, where you make it more efficient. More things go in landfills, more things, more consumer spending and sort of churn on that kind of thing. As opposed to logistics, where like when you make things more efficient, people do their jobs better, you move more goods with the same amount of trucks. There's just sort of a net benefit to like the world and everybody around.
Yeah, goals align pretty well when we're focused on all sorts of things, even sustainability, even our people, all of this. Well, very cool. You guys had some fun news announced recently. I saw that our friends over at Trucker Tools have been acquired. And so can you tell me a little bit more about what that means for your portion of this business and as far as from a technological standpoint, from a carrier management standpoint, just different things like that? What does that mean?
Totally. So I agree, super exciting news. We got to know the Trucker Tools team over like the second half of last year. First and foremost, Carrie and team, it's just an amazing team and like an amazing group of individuals. Super excited to be working more closely with them and have them join DAT. A number of them have already taken very prominent roles in terms of leading DAT forward, and so the vision that they've brought to Trucker Tools is something that we're excited to see at DAT as well. I also just say like the tool set they've built like is just best in class. Like for the carriers, for the truck drivers, they really are offering a value add that's sort of unparalleled in the industry. So when we looked at that, we just right away saw like this is something, carriers are obviously a huge customer base for DAT. This is something super valuable for our customers as well. But beyond that, we saw a lot of synergies in bringing them into DAT. A great example is they've got a best-in-class tracking solution. So they have a lot of information on telematics, ELD integrations that help locate where the trucks are. If you're thinking about this from freight and from a fraud point of view, knowing where a truck is or where a truck has been is something that can be put to really good use in knowing if the carrier is someone you want to work with and if they could be a reliable person to run your load.
Yeah. Well, you said fraud, another F word in this industry.
Fair enough.
I think that's something that's been talked about a lot. It gets covered a lot at conferences. We can't just say we're tired of hearing it and stop talking about it because it continues to be such a relevant topic, unfortunately.
Totally.
So I would love to hear from you on what you think how Trucker Tools is strategic in helping you guys combat fraud, but also just the things that DAT has been focused on already in combating fraud, and just any of your thoughts around the topic. I'd love to hear those.
Absolutely. So I agree with everything you just said. And if you were to come into DAT and you were to sit in one of our executive meetings or strategy meetings, what you would see is number one priority for the company is the availability of our platform and the safety of our platform, meaning are we preventing fraud on DAT's platform?
Yeah.
DAT, for better or for worse, is like a bank to the industry. It's where the loads are, it's where the most loads are, it's where the most trucks are, and so it's going to be a target for fraud. It's going to be, you want to steal money, you're going to go rob a bank, right? So what the first round of things we've done, and really I would say this is broader than DAT, I think it's good for everybody in the industry, is just to get passwords out of the system. So we've launched a whole new set of authentication mechanisms that allow, if you're working with like Microsoft or Google, you can use a single sign-on. But if you don't have that, if all you got is a phone, you can use like the Face ID on the phone to sign in. So no more password, which means no more phishing, no more hacking. So if everybody were on that, it would just create a huge safety barrier to who's entering the network in the first place. And again, that's something that's like good for everybody, no matter whether you're DAT or not. Beyond that though, what we really want to start to do is expose the data and the tools that are going to let everybody in our marketplace make the best decision about who's who, whether they're worthy of working with. And there's all these patterns that emerge from the data that allow for really good decision making. We just talked a little bit about ELDs and telematics coming from trucker tools. A great example would be like, let's say that somebody stole, like it was like MC theft, where somebody was like stealing an MC number, masquerading as a carrier that they are not. Often what we'll see in that is then they just blast that truck out all over the place. So if you see historical data that shows this truck ran this several lanes over here, and suddenly they're all over the country, that's a huge red flag. We can flag that with the data that's there and help people make decisions on that. Beyond that, though, what we want to give is more power back to both brokers and carriers and shippers in its ecosystem. So as part of that, we're going to let them post loads into these filters or preferences. So if you have a certain limit on your certificate of insurance or age of authority or being ELD integrated, you'll be able to put a load out there that only people who meet that criteria will see that load. So I'm super excited about that. I think that's actually going to like take a huge amount of sort of the noisy spam fraud that people have seen in the marketplace out.
Well, I think that's also just kind of in line with natural progression of where a lot of brokerages are trying to head right now. And that's away from the what we consider like that traditional brokerage model where everything is very transactional and it's try to bid a load, post a load, right? Totally. Try to cover a load. And we have encouragingly more and more brokers who are starting to try to say like we want to be more strategic in how we're procuring our carriers, and the more strategic they are with their carrier base, the more confident they are with providing committed rates, contractual obligations to their shipper clients. So there's a progression in the brokerage space in general, but that does require, or it makes it much better when you can operate kind of like that private load board concept or set strict parameters around who you're giving certain freight types to and profiles.
Totally, and exactly to your point, where you are in that process from booking the load to covering the load as a broker may determine just like how strict you're going to be in that whole thing. Sure. So you may be early in the process and want to really, first off, you're probably going to look within your own network. But then beyond that, you may want to keep the filter pretty tight on people you might want to work with. But if you get down to the last minute, again, DAT is this huge source of capacity. You can open that up. And so this is sort of what I'm saying about putting the power back to manage, like the ability to run your business back to the broker and decide how much risk you want to take on with these things. Yeah,
giving that optionality back.
Yep.
I want to ask a couple more questions on the fraud and carrier selection piece, because we talked about like single sign-on as an example. How are brokerages, when they're using a lot of, I think most brokerages understand that DAT is a very important source of capacity for them. How do we, despite the fraud that happens in the marketplace, continue to help these brokerages feel confident in securing capacity through DAT? What are some best practices and ways that they can be kind of making smarter decisions around how they're sourcing while using your tool?
Totally. So, and I want to just double emphasize this at the outset. I mean, in the last year, we've kicked off something like 12,500 carriers off our network. We are every day, you can imagine what that is on like a daily basis. We are every day sort of combing through this, looking for patterns like impossible travel and just basically like sign-in patterns that indicate this person's not who they say they are.
Can I ask a quick question? I've heard, I just want to address this because I've heard, the naysayers say like, well, they shouldn't have been there in the first place. Well, as is typical, anyone who's committing fraud is probably a pretty good liar, or right?
Yeah.
It's probably what we're doing is lying about something, right? So is it because it would create so much probably pretty bureaucracy and some difficulties? It would hinder the people who are there to do things the right way if we had. I don't know what that looks like. Just what are your thoughts? Help me understand this. Bad players still persist, and they continue to evolve. So I don't think that it's realistic to say that we're going to completely prevent them from getting into certain spaces, but the early identification or immediate identification is important. So how do we combat that?
It's a great lead-in and a great set of questions. I think first and foremost, fraud is I hate to say it any other way, but it is this entrepreneurial meritocracy where it's
it's sophisticated.
You should not these people are smart, and the same way people here are hacking their startups to try to figure out a way into the market, the fraudsters are out there with an entire other ecosystem trying to do that same thing. So the idea that we can think through every possible end to what that's doing, whether it's DAT or any entity out there, is probably not true. The other thing on the carrier side of it is the churn in the just general carrier population is massive. Really surprising, honestly, coming from another industry. I've never really seen customer churn at the rate where the lifespan of carriers can be less than a year or 2 years or something like that. And so in that sort of scenario, you constantly have new carriers coming in.
Yeah.
And we're talking about tens of thousands of carriers that are coming into the marketplace. There's, we are going to do everything we can. Like I said, we've implemented in the last year checks and nets, if you will, that are catching many, many of the bad actors as they're coming in. But it's a huge number. And so the idea that it goes to zero, I think, is probably implausible under any scenario. But if the question is should DAT do every last thing it can to come up with every version of how we might catch one of these, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And that is, like I said, it's literally our number one priority on the company strategy.
Right.
And we spend every day coming up and thinking about that.
Yeah. Awesome. That's exactly, I think, along the lines of what I was thinking. And I love the call out about the churn. Because this is a constantly evolving carrier. We're never going to vet all the carriers, right? We're never going to know everyone out there. And then, to make it more complicated, they don't just go out of business and disappear. They sell the authority to someone else before they go out of business.
Yeah.
So we have authorities changing ownership. We have things moving around constantly, and it's a lot more complex than that. So talk to me more about some of the feedback that you guys have been receiving from brokerages when it comes to these newer solutions that you're offering. Were the solutions driven by feedback from brokerages, and kind of just what are they looking for? How are they looking to use these kind of private load boards or the carrier filters and selections to strategically grow their businesses?
The feedback on the smart posting feature that I mentioned, this is the ability to post into filters that you set on sort of what carriers you might want to work with.
Right.
It's incredibly one-sidedly positive. It's how fast can you get this to me? How quickly can I use this? We have a few beta customers that have been out and sort of testing some of this with us, which is something we want to do more of going forward. I think there's probably a legacy where the spot marketplace worked a certain way, and it was kind of like a full deal that it worked that way. And we really want to move past that to where we're building lots of new product, really in conjunction with our customers, bringing them in, getting them to help guide us on what the best way to work is. And so this particular set of features that we're out right now came from customer visits we were doing basically over the course of last year. And gathering that feedback, looking at the way they work, looking at how they in their business are adapting to fraud today. A lot of them are picking up different tools, different data sets. Trucker Tools was one of those, in fact.
Yeah.
And so as we've been looking out there, that became a natural decision for us. It's okay, well, this is obviously this data set is a huge asset to the brokers. So let's bring that into DAT, offer it back to them, come up with other ways that we can put it into the freight marketplace and basically make the whole ecosystem more secure. And we're not done. That is something we absolutely want to do more of as we go forward.
Are these new features that you just mentioned, that you said they were piloted, are they available yet? Are they still piloting?
We have brokers that are coming on board as beta testers.
Okay.
So it's a real small set right now that we're just getting feedback from. And then somewhere around Q2, we'll do a broader rollout of these features. Okay.
I've had instances before where I've done a lot of podcasts with the DAT team, and I've had some brokers or be like, hey, I didn't know that was a feature or something like that. So how can people make sure that they are staying up to date with these updates, that they're hearing this information? If they have questions, how can they be reaching out? Who should they be contacting? Do you have any helpful guidance in that space?
So definitely I think all of our customers have like a DAT rep that's sort of like their point person. They are ultimately like dedicated to like answering those questions. But if you're someone who's like got direct feedback for us, I'd love to hear about it. Our product team would love to hear about it. For sure, our sales and our go-to-market teams would love to hear that. Really, honestly, this is sort of what I'm saying. It's like culturally, we want to be in a position where the answer is honestly everybody, and ultimately, we are going to be guided forward by listening to that feedback from our customers.
Yeah. Well, Brian, I'm happy that you chose logistics and freight, and you came and jumped into this crazy space. It sounds like there's a lot of exciting opportunities and things going on at DAT, so thank you for talking to me more about those things. Are you on LinkedIn?
Yep.
Okay, Brian's on LinkedIn, so if you guys would like to send a connection request there, I'm sure he would be happy to chat with you more. If you guys have questions, please leave them in the comments of this show. We're happy to get in, look at those, get answers to those, get you guys in contact with the people that you need to be in contact with. I love big organizations, but sometimes there's so many people, you need to be pointed in the right direction.
Totally happy to help there.
Sometimes that can happen. So let us know what it is you guys have questions about. We'd be happy to facilitate the right introductions, get all your questions answered, and also make sure you're following Brian and the team so we can get updates on the releases of new features as they're coming out and as things are leaving beta.
Yep.
And if you guys have some cool ideas, suggest those to Brian or his team if you guys want to get involved in helping drive innovation and changes that would make an impact for your brokerage or for your business. So, Brian, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. Very happy to meet you, and I will now be a subscriber to this podcast.
Yes!
Looking forward to it.
Thank you.